So hello, Karen. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Tessa. Thank you.
So I came across Karen from her Instagram account and have been really enjoying the little yoga sequences, which often have music with them. And they're really sort of practical, full of using props, and I've been really enjoying those, but also the poetry. Like you shared a really beautiful poem this morning about going back into lockdown. So I thought it'd be amazing to talk to Karen, just to find out a bit about how she got to the point of doing these things. So I'd like to start first of all with, where are you in the world?
So I live in, obviously, England, in Hampshire, in a little town, or say little town, called Basingstoke. So I've lived here since I was about 19. Yeah. So yes, so a few years now added on. So I've been here over 20 plus years.
Okay. And for those that are listening, can you describe where you are in terms of the room that you're sitting in?
Yes, I am currently sat in my living room. So I live in a 2-bedroom flat or apartment, depending on who's listening. And I'm sat, currently in my living room at the moment. So yes, with the heating turned right up.
Yeah, it's a cold day. It was frosty this morning on my lawn. Yeah. And it looks like sunshine where you are as well.
Yeah, if I hadn't closed the curtain, you wouldn't be seeing me, you'd be seeing more of the sunshine. But yes, it's a beautiful blue sky, and I will go out for a walk later. So yeah, it's beautiful today.
Yeah, it's one of those autumnal days where it sort of starts foggy, and then once that lifts, there's this beautiful blue sky.
Absolutely.
Lovely. Okay, and also just to give people a sense of who you are, I like to ask people about what their heritage is.
So I was born in Britain, or England, should I say, but both of my parents are from the Caribbean. They're both Jamaican. So I was born here in 1968. So nobody has to work it out. I'm 52. My parents met when they were in the UK. So they came over from Jamaica, I think, when they were probably 14 to sort of 18, something like that.
Lovely. Okay. And I'd love to hear a bit more about what you were like as a girl. So I'm imagining about the age of 10, if you can think back.
Oh,
That specific kind of, because I think it's because my daughter's just turned 10, and it's, I think, an interesting age, because I feel like she's really beginning to want to find her own identity and how she's different from mum and dad, and there's that independence coming through.
Well, my dad was in the British Army, so at the age of 10, I think we were living in Germany. So yeah, my sort of informative years were spent mostly in Germany, West Germany at the time. Obviously, there was a wall dividing West and East Germany at that time. So kind of got used to moving around a lot, which I think at that age, at sort of 10, still think it's quite exciting, but then starting to formulate friendships, which obviously after every 2 years we would move. So it was, I think, I suppose in that way you just kind of have a little bit of independence, knowing that you're going to be here a couple of years and then you're leaving. But I think as a child, we're going that far back, very inquisitive. I think I was quite creative. My gran used to say I would write her lots of stories, lots of poems, draw pictures. So I knew I was quite creative from an early age. And I used to like to take things apart as well as a child. So I'd take, unfortunately, dolls apart, pens, all of that kind of thing, just would take things apart and then try to put them back together again, unsuccessfully. Very unsuccessfully.
So you wanted to know how things worked?
Yeah, I think so. I think very much so. I was always very, and then I played a lot on my own. I'm an only child, so obviously go to school, you've got friends, but yeah, I think, spending time on my own, just creating games, that kind of thing, reading. I think I used to read a lot of books back then. Probably I should read more now. But yeah, I used to read a lot of books. And obviously back in the day, there wasn't the internet. So we didn't have things like that. We had encyclopedias that we would read. So yeah, I enjoyed playing football. So I can remember being around about that age, very much into football, climbing trees. Again, I think it's probably different because we had to entertain ourselves in different ways. But I'll always remember being in a tree really quite high up and my mum calling me. And then when I said hello from the tree, she's like, oh my God, how did you get up there? Get down immediately. So yeah, I think I've sort of scuffs and bruises and cuts from playing football, quite sporty. And I think around about 10, I was into gymnastics as well. So did a lot of gymnastics sort of after school activities, trying to, think about the old grey cells there. But yeah, that kind of thing, I think. And obviously, I think I'd mentioned to you when we spoke briefly before, I wanted to be a ninja assassin because tended to watch a lot of sort of martial art films when I was younger. But obviously that was not going to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, was sort of, at that age, did you already have an idea of what you might do with that creativity, or you were really focused on being the ninja assassin?
Yeah, definitely focused on being a ninja assassin. Didn't know where to apply, and I think my parents probably just humoured me from then. But no, I don't think I would have had any idea or concept of what I wanted to be. I think realistically, back in the day, it was kind of, I want to be a teacher or want to be a nurse, ninja assassin, or those kind of secretary. So yeah, I think it was probably slightly it's probably slightly different now, but I think those were kind of the things that thinking of doing.
So then did you sort of change as you became a teenager, or did you stay sporty?
Definitely stayed sporty. I think I left gymnastics behind. I think once you start to develop as a young lady, you kind of want to do other things. So that's when it turned to track and field. So very much I played hockey, netball, running. So cross country was the first thing that I did at school, cross country, and then obviously athletics. So yeah, was quite busy doing all those, and five-a-side football. So that didn't leave me. So we had youth clubs back in Germany. So yeah, playing five-a-side football. So yeah, still quite sporty. Sort of still at the school age, and obviously much younger, we didn't have English TV in Germany, so we tended to watch a lot of German TV or go outside and play. And then as I got older, I think I'm probably still playing netball, not so much hockey, but still the athletics, 100 meters, 200, long jump, 400 meters, relay. So
Wow.
yeah, did it all.
So at what point did you come across yoga?
Oh my goodness, I didn't come across yoga until I was probably in my early 30s. And it was at a sports centre here in Basingstoke that somebody was teaching yoga once a week on a Sunday. So started going to it, enjoyed it. And then ironically, her husband was in the army, so she left. And then that was the end of my yoga journey for a few years after that. And then just so happened, I think a few years ago, somebody mentioned her friend was doing sort of Bikram yoga and if I was interested. And then I started, I think sort of 6 years ago, just started going to yoga and became much more consistent. And I saw a Facebook, they sometimes send you these reminders. And even now I laugh because I think I'd said something like, this is my 7th class this week. And I was like, who does that? Who goes?
Wow.
I know. I was thinking, who does that? So
Wow, you got the yoga bug.
I did. But it felt like I everything I'd been searching for. So I think over the years, sort of in my early 20s, I decided to go on that personal journey of sort of discovery. And it was weird when I stepped onto a yoga mat, it was almost as if I felt that everything I had done previously in terms of self-help
Mm.
just led to yoga. It's, and I'm not, if you know me, I'm not that profound sort of person that will be sort of talking from the heart and all that kind of thing. But it was just the feeling that I'd found peace, I'd found joy, and everything else that I'd done to better or help to love myself, and be
Mm.
at one and accept who I was and just be comfortable in my skin. It was just as if I'd found yoga was the sort of the icing on the cake in a
Mm.
way. And yeah, and that's where I just fell in love with it and did yoga teacher training, started that in 2018. Didn't think I wanted to teach at all. I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to start this. And then we had a 6-month break before we went back to the second half. And then it just felt like it was sort of yoga, yoga, yoga every minute of the day between the first stage and the second stage. Yeah, and that's sort of not looked back since. But yeah, so it's
So
been
was it initially you thought that you'd do the training to take your own practice to a deeper level, or? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't have any, because I work full time, so I didn't have any thoughts of, oh, I'm going to give up my full-time job and start teaching yoga. It literally was, I just want to deepen the practice. I obviously had eased up, or I wasn't going sort of 7 days a week to yoga at that stage. But yeah, I didn't think about teaching at all. It was literally just to deepen the practice.
Mm. And did you feel immediately comfortable in the Bikram class? Because I've over the years I've done lots of different styles, and it does seem like different kinds of people that can be attracted to different sorts of yoga classes. Like, Iyengar class had a different vibe and a different kind of person it would attract to, say, the Shivananda class that I used to go to. I don't know if you've had that experience.
I think when I started going to the class, it was difficult because I never really looked into the history of yoga. I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go along to this class, and I think at the time I was very much driven by what can I do, how can I do it. Oh, look, where can I put my leg? Oh, it was better than last week. So I think I was quite competitive of myself when I started. And I suppose it was more physical, even though I felt that connection when I stepped on the mat. I think with doing Bikram, it was just about how much better could I be than last week, because obviously the poses are the same, so
Mm.
you can see a progression.
Mm.
And then it was interesting, the lady that was doing the Bikram classes, she then started to introduce more of a slow flow. So still had your Bikram, and then you had a different type where it was coming into not so much vinyasa flow, but just something slightly different offering. So
Mm.
where you could feel like you didn't have to be full on every week, it because
Mm.
there's not really many modifications or variations with Bikram. So it was just nice to have a different alternative to be able to start to relax a little bit more, and
Mm.
sort of start to tune in to how the body was feeling, more about the aesthetics of a pose. So yeah, I think it was nice to be able to think, oh, there is actually more that you can do rather than these sort of regimented poses. Not saying that anything's wrong with Bikram
Mm.
at all. And as I say, that was the one I was doing sort of seven times
Mm.
times a week. But yeah.
That's what I really like about your videos on your Instagram account, because um, you were talking recently about how you were thinking that some people might not as easily be able to do some of the poses as, you know, I think you were showing a squat and using blocks to sort of lower down. And I think, you know, you make it quite accessible for people to maybe come into yoga that might not immediately think that it's for them.
That changed. I think when I was going through my yoga teacher training, I I think that's when I started feeling and wondering, well, this how everybody's doing everything. We're kind of in a bubble because I'm with people that can move. And the people that come into the class or the classes that I was used to going to, it wasn't really, if a beginner came in, let's be honest, they never came back because it just was not a beginner's class. But you kind of don't see that as a student, as a participant, you don't notice that. And then when I was in between the training sessions, we had to ensure that we taught some classes. So obviously friends were very much like, yes, I'll do this, I'll do this. And it was interesting. I'd planned everything and went round to a friend's house and said, right, okay, this is what we're going to do in my wonderful enthusiasm. And she just couldn't. I mean, she literally, you know, and I was stunned. It kind of woke me up to say, you know what, you are in a bubble. You're surrounded by people who movement is not is second nature. And even though you see your friends and we might go out and dance, that's a one-off. How they actually live their life and move, it was a shock to me. That was a real shock to see. And then alongside the training, I was doing an anatomy course because I knew straight away that the 200-hour yoga teacher training wouldn't be enough. So I signed up to do some more, which was interesting to really, then I discovered I really loved biology and anatomy and thinking, why would I discover this now after turning, you know, I didn't like it at school, but I seem to like it now. I was just absolutely fascinated with how the body can move.
What do you think made the difference? Because I've had that experience as well. Like at school, biology, I was sort of can take it or leave it. But now I would maybe even call myself an anatomy geek, especially around like the female pelvis. That's my particular area that I'm just fascinated about because of teaching pregnancy and teaching menstrual cycle awareness. I love anatomy now.
I genuinely don't know. I don't know what. I think it's probably because maybe when I was younger, I liked to know how things worked. But when you're under pressure to choose your subjects, know what you want to be, you know, all of that kind of thing, you know, probably then it was just like, it's just another thing. It's just another layer on top of something that I've got to know. I've got to know who I want to be at a certain age. Whereas now it's, I don't have to prove it to anyone. If I enjoy something, I'm going to enjoy it without the additional pressure of what is it going to be? Who am I going to be if I choose to do this? If I'm to choose to be an anatomy geek, does it fit with the people that I'm hanging around with? All of a sudden you come into a sense of your own. And if you want to be an anatomy geek or enjoy something that's part of your passion, I think if it's part of your passion, nobody can stop you from pursuing that. And I think not having the pressure of ultimately who am I going to be, what am I going to be, yeah, I think maybe it was just being able to embrace it without anybody looking or having any expectation of myself or anybody else. So yeah, and as I say, just also making mistakes with friends, making the assumption they could move, having to scrap the whole class, this beautiful class plan I'd written out for a very, very able-bodied person that was probably doing yoga for quite a while. So just understanding that and breaking it down and saying, okay, let's forget what I planned. Let's start. How do you move? Let's see. So that was a bit of an eye opener. And then also, I think being enthusiastic that you think you're going to be able to correct somebody's posture, or so all of those things that helped me come back into my lane effectively and stay in my lane, I think helped a lot by then seeing and taking a step back and saying, okay, people don't necessarily, they can't move, and what will happen if I use some blocks, what would happen if I used a chair.
Mm.
And that's how I started then introducing into my own practice the use of props. I use blocks because I then realized, again with anatomy, nobody talks about it in yoga, our body proportions. They just assume that we can make these beautiful shapes, and actually our bone length and our torso, legs, arms may never do that because we're not proportioned in that way, and nobody talks about that. So I found as I started using props, it was giving me space to
Or
move.
as women, if somebody has bigger breasts, some of the forward bends can then feel quite suffocating, or and I we didn't cover that. Excuse me, we didn't cover that at all during my training. I mean, I'm trying to remember whether there was really a mix of different body shapes, and I think there was. But our tutor was male, and yeah, I don't think we really dug into that kind of aspect of accommodating everybody.
No, we didn't. We had a male in yoga teacher training, especially for the asana side. So he was very, very much that he could do everything. And actually, the way he did the training also, I think, helped. There was only 6 of us, but also helped us to understand that is not the way we would want to teach anybody. So I know when you come out of training, sometimes you're very much, I'm going to teach exactly how I've been training or taught, whereas I came out of that and went, absolutely no way in God's earth will I want to run a class that way. And actually, because it was vinyasa, and then I thought, do I actually want to teach that? So I spent maybe a good couple of months or after that thinking, I don't really know how I want to teach, but I know how I don't want to teach. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting, and then more or less after that, I just couldn't stop learning. It was just as if I'd got on this train, and yes, I understand especially with having a full-time job, I was able to then take more courses. So I took one with Amber Carnes and Diana Bondi for Yoga for All. So that was just another introduction into, ways of using props and looking at people with a bigger body. And I remember somebody saying to me, you can only really teach from your own experience and the body that you're in. And I said, I disagree. I really disagree. I think you can to a certain extent, but you can also think, well, if I had abundance in the front body, how would I explain that? What would I do? I've got a bit of a bad back sometimes. So, you know what? And then there's some days I think I don't want to go to the floor. So if I don't want to go to the floor, I don't want to use my wrists and my hands, what are the alternatives? So that's how I started to think around, okay, I'm in a particular size body, but how can I step outside of myself and introduce just little ways of doing things, and always being true to a prop, because it was very much, only old people use props, or only people who can't do the full expression of the pose use props. And it was very much, I'm walking around with my blocks or my strap, and I am using them not to prove a point, but to say, this is how I practice. It's not something that's just for Instagram. This is how I practice. Even when nobody's watching, I'll have a prop, by my side.
And you've mentioned a few times your full-time job. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about that and sort of how you got to that.
Yeah, so I work for a design and build company as their group compliance manager. So I think I've been working full-time ever since I was 18. And this particular company I've been with them, which is a company called Workplace Futures Group. I've been with them for about 3 years now. So I worked previously, the company I worked for, I was a project manager for 12, 13 years. And one of the companies underneath the group, they used to do a lot of work for us, so fit out. And then I think I got to a point where I just thought, I'm done with this job now after 12 years. It doesn't match with who I am, how I'm now living my life, and I'm leaving. That's it. No job to go to, but I made the decision, spoke to my parents, as they're both sensible, and said, this is what I'm planning to do. I can't stay there because I'm starting to notice things like I don't want to get out of bed, don't want to communicate with people, have no energy to do anything. And I said, I think I'm going down a road that is not good for my mental health. So I'm giving up this job. That's it, I'm done. So handed my notice in, and literally this company rang me and said, do you want to come and work for us? We've been asking you for years to come and work for us. And we've been playing golf with your boss. We've heard you leaving. So that was it. So that's how I got the job. And I did say, do I need an interview? And they said, no, we know you. We know how you
Great, isn't it?
work.
You took a
Yeah.
leap of faith, just knowing that it wasn't the right thing to be in anymore. And by opening up that space, found the right thing.
Yeah,
That's great.
definitely. And obviously since March, I've been working from home. So they're based in London. So I was traveling to London every day, Monday to Friday. And actually teaching wise, I was teaching once a week after work there. So the staff, I was teaching the staff. And then I had a Sunday teaching job as well. So I was only teaching a couple of times a week, and then I thought, well, this will be it really, because I just haven't got any more time to sort of kind of delve a little bit more into it. So, and then obviously March came around, and things slightly changed from there.
And tell me some more about the poetry that you write, because you mentioned as a child you were already writing stories and poems. So how did it get to the point where you sort of felt that you wanted to share it on Instagram?
So I think I just stopped writing. I don't know why. I stopped writing poetry and stories, and I think just got on with life. So that creative side, I think, just got buried underneath everyday life. And then in 2011, I had a hysterectomy after being ill for several years. I think I might have been the only person that didn't realise how ill I was. And then in recovery, I thought, what am I going to do for 8 weeks? I don't know. I don't, what am I going to do? And I started to write. And in the 8 weeks, I think it was just pouring out of me, poetry. And then I started publishing on what I think it's called Wattpad. First of all, I put my poetry on there. And then every now and then, not very often, I created a page on Facebook and then closed that down. And then I don't know, I just thought one day, oh, let's just post something on Instagram and just see, just post it there. And yeah, so every now and then I'll just be walking the other day, and I was walking and then just thought, oh, and those four lines just came up, and then I tinkered around with it, and I thought, no, that's it. That's exactly what I'm going to say. So there is no process. Sometimes I just think how I feel, or just could see something that's happening sort of globally and then write about it. And it's interesting because it's not always from personal experience I'm writing. It could be just about a topic and something comes to me and I write it. So I always laugh and say, I don't know who's whispering in my ear. But yeah, so some of the things I write about, it's not personal experience. It's just words come to me and I put them down on paper.
Would you describe it like it's a sort of creative release, or a because it sounds like it sort of just comes to you, almost like you're sort of downloading it from somewhere. And then I think it's lovely that then you do share it, because it'd be quite easy to write it and just have it written down somewhere. But I think by sharing it, it has a ripple out effect then, doesn't it?
It does. And I think sometimes when I've been clearing, obviously when you have a clear out and think like empty cupboards and stuff, I think I didn't used to share it, because I will find books with poetry written in, and you think, oh, and all the critic in me like, oh no, I wouldn't say that, oh, I'd change that now, and all, you know. But yeah, it can be a release. I think when you get into writing, you could lose yourself. Sometimes I can write something really quickly and it'll be over and done within 15 minutes, because the words are just tumbling out and you can't even keep up with writing it down or trying to record it. And then sometimes I'll start with a line and I know that's not the beginning, but I don't know where it fits in. And then you build the rest of the poetry around the line, or you build the poetry around a word. So sometimes, and those are the ones that take longer, because you're like, I know it's this word, and it's how do I, what is it? What do I want to convey? What do I want to say in this? And then again, I suppose from when I was younger, let's just take things apart and let's just build it all back up again. So yeah, and it's just so nice to get lost in that sort of construction in a way.
Yeah, you enter into a bit of a flow state, don't you?
Mm.
Yeah. I'm wondering, do you actually read poetry in your classes sometimes?
No, never. Never.
Yeah. 'Cause we have a friend in common, Katia, and in her yin classes, she often reads poetry. And I think because when you're resting in those longer poses, and it feels quite spacious, to have some beautiful words, I think somehow you receive them in a deeper way than
And
when there's the busyness of life, you know.
And I think I wrote one poem when we first had lockdown, and a couple of people said to me, oh, can we use this poem? We just love it so much. And I said, yes, of course you can. And I think the reason I probably don't read is because when we were doing coming to the last bit of our yoga teacher training, I wrote a poem specifically about the training and included everybody. So sometimes I could just look at you and say, oh, I'm going to write a poem about you, Tessa. I know a little bit about your life. I'm now going to write a poem that you know is specifically and unique for you. And I just blubbed all the way through reading that. And I just think sometimes there's certain poems that I read that do make me quite emotional if it's my own poetry, and I just think I do not want to dissolve into tears whilst I'm teaching a class. So I think that might be why, because I can get quite emotional about sort of rereading something I've written, or if something means a lot to me, to read it, I know emotionally I might tend to turn into a blubbering so no, I don't read any poetry at all.
Yeah. And I've been asking everybody in these episodes how cycles affect them. And it might be all sorts of different cycles, whether somebody is still having their menstrual cycle, or it's more they feel a connection to the moon, or even just the circadian, just kind of the 24 hours. So I was interested to know if cycles affect how you do the yoga, or do you tend to have inspiration for your poetry at particular times of the day?
I think probably seasonal affects me. So I think I might be much more stay at home, even though I'm saying that, and since March that's exactly where I've been, so that's quite funny. But I think in the winter I tend to be much more about staying in, being at home. I enjoy sort of my own company a lot. You know, I can potter around thinking I don't know what I've done today, but I haven't been bored. I've just enjoyed myself. So I think wintertime is much more, probably more creative for me, I think. But I think writing poetry or doing anything in classes, I tend to find if I can go for a walk, that all of a sudden will be where I start to think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I think being outside is a good thing. And then obviously if there's any rain or anything like that, I find that I might get a bit foggy in the brain and a bit restless, and definitely need to be relaxed when creativity
Mm,
starts, I think. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see, but I'm not sure. But fresh air definitely helps with the mood and the creativity,
mm,
because as I'm walking, I'm thinking, oh, I can do, what about this, what about that, what about, and the mind is off, and then yeah. But poetry wise, I think it could be what's happening around. It could be the mood, like the one that I just wrote, or when there was Black Lives Matter, just some things that you just feel energetically and right, I think. So yeah, I've never really kind of studied it or understood how and when things will pop up. I genuinely can't answer that question, but
mm,
I
mm,
know in terms of, I love the sun. I
mm,
love the sunshine. So I think I work better when it's a beautiful sunny day. So we'll see how these winter months go.
mm. And I also wanted to ask you whether there's been a sort of transformative experience that you've had. Um, I mean, maybe particularly because you were talking before about there were lots of different sort of self discovery things that you were trying out, and then when you stepped on the mats, you felt like you'd come home. So that sounds quite transformative. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think really for me the big transformation was having the hysterectomy, purely because I didn't know how ill I was. And I think I lost a lot of confidence prior to having the operation, and just felt very insular. So a lot of it, people would say, "Would you want to come out here? Do you want to do this?" And I would make excuses and tend not to do a lot of things, and kind of lost myself in that process. So it was after that's when I started to do yoga after that. So yeah, I think once that was lifted, it was kind of like, okay, how do you live your life now? You can't hide behind an illness, which is in a way, I think, what I did. And that was a bit of a, oh, what do I do now? Who am I? What can I do? How do I reinvent myself? Do I want to reinvent myself? And I didn't know that I'd lost my confidence. I didn't know that I was scared to go out in the world and start. And I think that's why then, when stepping onto the mat, was just sort of like, wow, this, I wouldn't have dreamed of going to yoga beforehand. It was just, yeah, I just kind of spent a few years just in limbo, and then obviously having just then getting back the confidence, being able to go out and enjoy life. And really, I think as well, up until that point, it was like, oh, you're not married and you haven't got children and you really need to do this. You've got to, these are the sort of pressures, you've got to do that. With the hysterectomy, not that I would be wishing that on anybody, it was kind of, well, okay, new chapter of your life. What are you going to do about it? And
So it
so,
freed you in some ways.
yeah, freed me to be, okay, it's not what society expects of you. How are you going to show up in the world? How are you going to live your life? And I had to find that and embrace it, and just was a bit of a lease of life, and not being afraid. I think I was afraid a lot to step into my own power, just hiding behind being unwell, but just being able to live from day to day. So having that taken away, and just being able to say, okay, who are you? What do you want to do with life? What do you enjoy? And at the time I didn't. I felt, not jealous or envious. I was just like, how do people have a passion? where do you get that? How do you have a passion for anything? And then, yeah, yoga came into my life. And then I just was like, oh my God, I get it. It's not about shouting it from the rooftops. It's when nobody sees you that you've been practicing something for 3 hours. And then you don't even know you've been practicing for 3 hours. And it's not, oh, I'm going to post it, because I wasn't really then using social media much. But again, it was personal to me. I wouldn't be doing that. And even now I still do something, and I won't say on Instagram, oh, I've been doing that for 3 hours. It's not there to share every aspect of what I do. So yeah, I think that was the transformation for me. And then everything just kind of went like that. So it went up. So yeah.
Because I was wondering whether actually there was a sort of long diagnosis involved, because very often to do with that sort of area of the body, whether it's fibroids or endometriosis, or people have these incredibly long journeys where they're trying to convince somebody, a health professional, that there is something that is not normal. It's not just sort of that you can put down to normal women's troubles in inverted commas, but it isn't right. I know so many women who've been in that situation, and I can see how that would completely knock your confidence and drain the life, out of you.
It definitely was, because it was fibroids. I had probably about 30 mini fibroids, and it was just, I just felt like I was going to the doctors and just constantly, take this tablet, do this, do less of this, do more of this, and then you just think, you know what, again, my little independent side of me thought, well, I'm just going to just get on with it. You know what, that's what we do as women. Let's just get on with it. And then you don't notice the gradual deterioration. And then it came to a head where I just thought I was perhaps quite lazy, in the fact that I would think I'd go to the gym and I think, well, beforehand I could run on this machine. I can't even, I can just about walk on it. And I think, okay, maybe not the running machine, go to the rowing machine. And then I think, I can't pull this machine. It's, oh gosh, you're so, and then that self-talk, that criticism that, you're lazy, you need to do more, why are you so out of breath, and what are you eating? So it was all of that kind of thing, not 1 minute thinking that I was actually ill. And I had a blood test, because I just thought, I just feel absolutely exhausted all the time. Had a blood test, and the hospital rang me and just said, oh, you had a blood test today, could you come up to the hospital now? And I said, oh, well, I'm going to the gym. They said, no, you need to come up now. Went up there, and they basically said, how are you still walking? Because your blood count is so low that if you have another period, you may end up having a blood transfusion. And they said, how did you get here? And I said, oh, I drove. And they said, well, you cannot get back in the car. We just simply don't know how you've actually managed to survive. So yeah, that's when my parents came, picked me up. Work were brilliant, because a lot of the time they just said, stay at home. I could work from home. So that was probably a saving grace, not mixing with a lot of people, because the hospital said, we don't know how you haven't picked up every flu, every symptom out there, because your immune system is shot to bits, basically. And that's when I kind of thought, well, I can't hide the pain that I'm in. And I actually was hiding the pain that I was in. I didn't want anybody to be concerned. I didn't want my parents to be concerned. I didn't want work to be concerned. And then it all sort of unraveled from there, because work were then saying, actually, we are concerned about you. We have a call every Monday morning, and you're telling us you never do anything. So we know that aside from working, you're not really living. And then my parents said, you're our child, and your quality of life isn't good. So I felt like I was being attacked in a way from all sides. And I just thought I was holding it together and living a life which obviously I wasn't living as I could have. So yeah.
If you could go back and say something to that younger self, would you have some advice about how to move forwards in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Ask for help, really ask for help, ask for support, because it was there, especially with family and friends, but I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought, and also not just believing what you're being told by a medical professional. So if somebody just says, well, just take this blue pill or that red pill, and you think, okay, yeah, okay, and off you go, don't wanting to cause any trouble, you then have to fight sometimes for there is something wrong, that's not going to work, and I demand to see somebody or take it further rather than just accepting what's being told. And perhaps then have opening up to family and friends, they probably would have encouraged me to pursue that. So yeah, I would go back and say, be much more open, speak to people, don't just accept what's been told if you feel that isn't right, and get on with your life. This is here, you've got just the one opportunity. So yeah.
Because I think that's the beauty of something like a red tent, the women's circles, where, I mean, we don't only talk about sort of cycles and wombs and things like that, but it does come up in conversation, and you begin to understand that actually people have a lot of similar experiences. But you'd also be able to understand then when actually you were having an experience that was at at one of the end ranges of normality, and actually this isn't right, and actually some further help is needed here. Because I think whatever these talking about periods or whatever it is shrouded in secrecy, then we just don't know what is normal, and we might put up with things that we really shouldn't.
Absolutely. And I think that was the issue. It became a normal life for me. It was just normal. And yeah, you just don't think outside of the box at all. And not letting anybody in to assist me. I just thought, well, I've just got to suck it up and get on with it. And this is my life. This is how it goes. So yeah, knowing now what I know, it isn't normal at all, and can seek help, and yeah, so that's why I kind of just go out and live life and enjoy.
So if people would like to find you to maybe attend one of your yoga classes, now that they know that you will welcome anybody in any shape that they come in, where can they find you?
So I'm currently working on my website. So I'm just hopefully in the throes of finishing that off. But currently they can find me on Instagram, which is Karen James Yoga, and the same on Facebook. It's Karen James Yoga. And my email address, my website will be Karen James Yoga as well. So it's all consistent.
That's brilliant. That's lovely. I think that's such a gift that you've given, because sometimes in the red tent we have women who are having issues and they are facing a hysterectomy, and there can be a lot of grief involved because of all the sort of expectations you were talking about. And I love that you said that actually that was the transformative moment, and that was actually opened up the space for you to find the yoga and other things.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Because as we like to find bad news, and oh my goodness, did I find a lot of bad news about having a hysterectomy on on the internet. Anything awful, I found it. And then I had to kind of have a word with myself and say, no, stop looking at all of that. Stop thinking this is how your life's going to be. You are going to define how your life's going to be. Understand the experiences of other people, but also understand that is not you. So I was determined, actually, to the point that I think the next day after I had the hysterectomy and was up out of the bed, and yeah, the nurse was not impressed with me at all. But I was determined to create and carve out my life and not allow the bad news or any stories that I'd read. There was inspirational stories, but you don't really look for those. You're kind of looking for something that will suit the mood at the moment. So I was really determined that I wasn't going on the internet. I was going to live the life that I choose, and yeah, take it from there.
Well, that's brilliant. I think that's a great place to stop, because that's a great message to you get to define what your life is about. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, and you, Tessa. Thank you.